Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Jarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
For Wells.
We are in a live episode, and yeah, we are going to be reacting and giving our very raw thoughts on the playoffs. And now those matchups are set. We have just gone through the entire play-in tournament, so there are some eliminations. We will have some, a couple of off seasons to break down. But please, before we do get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, the NBA play-in is over and the playoffs will begin. I guess, if you're on the East Coast, it's already after midnight, so you basically have a little over 12 hours right before we have our first playoff game. But we'll start off with these last couple of play-in games. You had the first one between the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks. We were much better with our predictions this second time around, right, where we both picked the Heat and the Grizzlies to win. And in the first game, the Heat ended up winning 123-114. With Tyler Hero once again leading the way with 30 points, 7 assists, 8 rebounds, right? Some big shots in the overtime, right? As well as other stretches of the game. Bam Adebayo with 17 and 11, along with 7 stocks, right? So 2 steals and 5 blocks, 5 assists. Wiggins with 28 and 8. And then Davion Mitchell, the hero off the bench, with 16 and 5. Some big plays on both ends of the floor, including, I think, 3 threes in overtime, if I'm not mistaken. Just kind of like a collective effort from the Miami Heat on both ends of the floor. For most of the game, they were able to limit Trae Young. He shot 9 for 22. Most of his damage came second half, mostly the fourth quarter, and I think overtime. Right, they were kind of able to slow him down. It kind of at times came at the cost of some of the other guys, like Onyeka Okongwu, 28 and 12, Karis LeVert with 15, 7 and 6, and then Georges Niang with 20. But you needed Trae Young to kind of be able to turn it on at some point, and he did get it going. But the Heat just were able to make some big baskets in the fourth and the overtime, and they were kind of able to put it away. And it's funny because they've really struggled doing that. For most of the season anyways, and then obviously post Jimmy Butler trade, it had gotten even worse. Obviously, they lost 10 games in a row. They did have some injuries. They closed the season out on a good note going into the play-in, right? And then they had a dominant win over the Bulls, right? And then obviously this big win where they led for most of the game, looked like they were going to blow it, and then they were able to pull out the win again. So now they are the first 10th seed to, be able to make the playoffs through the play-in, right? First 10 seed in history. And now they're going to be going into a first round matchup against the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? So that's probably still going to be a very difficult matchup, but obviously congratulations to the Heat for, despite a lot of what happened over the course of the season, I guess finishing the season strong and culminating that with the playoff seeding again. But once again, it's as the lower seed. You're not going to have Jimmy Butler to help you out this time, so they're probably still going to go home early. 4 or 5 game series, but I guess either way they're here.
Yeah, shout out to the Heat though. I really did enjoy this playing game. I thought it was very entertaining. I was glad that we got to see, an overtime game, very back and forth, with some premier offensive guys and, some solid defense from both of these teams, really, in my opinion. But, that's where Miami really stood out, was defensively. And then, you have, once again, those unsung heroes like a Davion Mitchell, where he just kind of comes out of nowhere and gives you everything he's got off the bench. And you're going to need guys like that if you want to make a playoff run. Granted, like you said, you are going to be playing Cleveland. How likely is it that you even really get one game on a team like that? Probably, not very likely. We'll see. I think it's going to be a sweep. I thought it was going to be a sweep regardless. But, at the end of the day, it is pretty cool that you're, the 8th seed and the first 10 seed to, get get out of the play-in, which is really awesome, I think. But does it really amount to anything at this point? Probably not. And yeah, we'll kind of just have to see where it goes from there. But, I liked what I saw from, all their guys, to be honest.
I mean, the Davion Mitchell pickup, right, kind of helps, right, because that gives you a guard who can come in and play both ends of the floor. And, offensively, he's played pretty well for Miami, too. And that's always kind of been the biggest problem with his game, right? Because we know defensively he can guard, even though he is an undersized guard. He's kind of a solidly built guy, but he is 6 feet tall. So the offensive questions were kind of the issues were for him in terms of not getting a whole lot of playing time, and for the Kings, stuff because that's another decent player that you drafted, right? That seemingly has found a home elsewhere, right? So just kind of another L, if you want to stack on top of a lot of the issues that had been going on from the Kings this season. Again, Like you said, uh, it was good that we got at least one good playing game tonight because you weren't sure what you were going to get from either of these games. Especially this one, you weren't sure just because of the nature of these two teams.
Mhm.
But again, I guess with 6 playing games, you hope to at least get maybe 2 good ones, maybe 3, right? Back like 50 or whatever you want to ask for. But again, yeah, like you said, it was a team effort, solid performance all around. And you needed, your best players to kind of come alive late in the game. So that's what Tyler Hero was able to do for them. And he's had a really good year, right? It was all-star year, kind of showing, that he's made significant improvements and strides in his game. Ultimately still probably can't be the best player on, like a really, really good team, right? So that's where, like, if you're the Heat, obviously, you're going to be, I guess, at some point looking for the next Jimmy Butler or whatever. But at least for Hero, right, this is a guy who's been in a lot of trade rumors. So, for him, I'm sure that's probably good to see that the work that he's put in has paid off where, now he's at least offensively the go-to guy on
Yeah.
this team. And Khalil Ware, right, as a rookie, being able to step in as a center and give Miami more size, more athleticism, more rim protection. Didn't shoot any threes in this game, but didn't really need to, right? He got a lot of opportunities around the basket. He's a really good athlete. And, this is why, I was kind of high on him in the draft because I had him going, I think, one pick after, right, to the Lakers, right? But he ended up going to the Heat when I think he was projected to go a little bit lower because people wondered about what would his motor look like, right? How would that translate? And it's been, really good for them. So, congratulations to them for going into the playoffs. But, I don't know how much you can expect against a Cavs team that has been one of the best teams in the league all season. You could always give a team a game just because there could be a game where you just go off from 3 and that's that. Of course, it could happen, but I don't see a scenario where they're able to beat them 4 out of 7 times. So
Yeah.
either way, I expect it to be a quick series.
Yeah. Same. I'm thinking a
Yeah,
sweep.
and then from a Hawks perspective, their season is over, right? And that's tough because obviously for them, they finished with what 3 less losses than the Miami Heat. They were 40-42, just under 500. But earlier in the season, right, they looked like a pretty good team that seemingly had kind of been better than what most people expected, right? I think the over under for them was in the 30s, and we picked under for them. We thought they would be like a pretty bad basketball team,
Mhm.
but they actually had the makings and the foundation of a good team, before Jalen Johnson got hurt, right? Because he was, one of their best players, and he was kind of able to give them production on both ends of the floor, right? He gave them what, 19 a game, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, just, some really good all around play. His play leveled off right as the season went on because he got hurt, and then obviously he had the shoulder injury, and that pretty much completely ended his season. Right? Obviously, he's going to be in, I think, year 1 of his big extension coming next year. He showed he was worth it. Just got to stay healthy. And just kind of a tough situation. Just like Untamed said, the play-in screwed Atlanta over bad. Yeah, because that's a team that if there was no play-in, they'd be in the playoffs as the 8th seed. But now they're out of the playoffs, and they also, I don't believe, are going to have their pick because I believe the Spurs will get it, right? And because they missed the playoffs, I think it's going to be a lottery pick. There's supposed to be some type of tiebreaker, I think, between them and the Kings, and I think some of that was kind of determined by the Grizzlies Mavs game or whatever. But either way, yeah, just kind of a tough second half of the season for the Hawks because I think if Jalen Johnson hadn't have gotten hurt, I think they would have been better. How much better could they have been? Could they have been good enough to win a playoff series? I don't know. But they looked like a good team, especially, again, they kind of figured out what to do with all of those athletic two-way guys around Trae Young, like Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson and Risa Shea and Okongwu. So you have a decent core there. You just got to get healthy, and then you kind of have to see what you can do, I guess, in the offseason. I don't know what the ceiling of this team is, but, for the Hawks, it's tough. And then also this Heat will get smoked by the Cavs. Yeah, they don't really have much of a chance at winning that series. You just don't have enough talent. Like I said, maybe you take a game just by getting hot from 3 in a game, but yeah, I can't. Even if the Hawks got in, I think it'd be a quick series. In
Yeah,
the
I agree.
regular season, I think the Hawks took care of the Cavs in the regular season, but I think that was during the earlier part of the season when Johnson was healthy. Yeah, if Johnson didn't get hurt, 6 seed easy. Yeah, I think they would have been a playoff team
Yeah.
had it not been for the Johnson injuries.
Yeah,
Like, could
they're
they have
not
been a
bad at
top
all.
4 seed? Maybe not, but I think they would have been I definitely think they would have been able to avoid the play-in. I mean, they finished with 4 more losses than the Pistons, right? Healthy Jalen Johnson probably could have made the difference.
Yeah, the young core is amazing. Surrounding Trey Young, like I love that core. Do I love the bench? Absolutely not. I think that's probably their biggest weakness. But you have a guy like Reese O'Shea who has that. Um, you know, really like I don't even know how to explain it. Kind of like a just amazing feel for how to play off the ball. You have Dyson Daniels, obviously. We already know what he can do defensively, and Jalen Johnson on both ends of the floor, along with Okongwu. So, it's like the core is not bad by any means. And yeah, like Untamed said, they pretty much got screwed in with the play in. But, I'm kind of high on this team. I know people have been asking the question, well, do you potentially look Trey Young? I mean, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, the thing is that like with the way that Young has played, right? I mean, he's I mean, obviously, like this year he didn't shoot the ball quite as well, but I mean, the Hawks were winning games and looking pretty good before the injuries. So, I mean, I don't think you necessarily have to do that. I just think it comes down to, if you're the Hawks, what is your plan for next season? Because obviously they're going to have a couple of stretches where they're not going to have their own first. So, if you're trading away Trey Young, you would think the expectation is you're almost kind of in full on rebuild mode, but it's kind of hard to do that if you don't have all your picks locked up. So, I mean, I wouldn't say he's like a lock to stay there completely, but I mean, I still think it would be a scenario where I think they like him as their franchise guy. So I don't really see a scenario where he gets moved unless he's like, I want out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I
I
mean, I
agree.
could be wrong because obviously we saw Luka get moved, but just as a whole, I think they do like him there in Atlanta. I mean, like clearly, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
the team is quite literally built around him in terms of the core. So it's like, I don't think he's going to get traded. I'm just talking about like, in terms of the
Mhm.
discourse that I've seen. It's like kind of a
Yeah.
weird thing that I've been hearing, but like you said, since Luca got traded, everybody's kind of on pins and needles.
Also, he mentioned Dyson Depoy. I had him. I think I had him first team all defense.
Same.
If I'm not mistaken, I had Mobley as the defensive player of the year, but I think he'll get some votes. I don't think he'll win it, but I think he'll at least get some votes, and he'll definitely be on one of the all defensive teams. I mean, he had a great season. I mean, and I think he should win most improved. Maybe he doesn't, but I think he should. I think he was both of our picks for most improved.
Yeah, I had Amon Thompson as
Oh, okay.
MIP,
My
but
bad.
it's all good. No,
Another
I think
defensive guy.
yeah, I think Dyson Daniels for sure deserves to be in, the conversation for all those things. But it's kind of
Do we?
hard for a guard to win Depoy. I feel like, you
Yeah,
know,
Marcus Smart got it.
I know, but like even then, like it's really tough. Like you have to kind of be a little bit more
Right.
versatile than I think Dyson Daniels is. Like as great of an on-ball defender and as good as as he is
Right.
getting in the passing lanes and just kind of picking people's pockets, I think you do have to be slightly more versatile. But I
Well,
wouldn't
there's
be
a
mad
reason
if he
why
won it.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why the bigs win it
Yeah,
because even if it's a big like like say like a Gobert who's more like a traditional rim protector, usually the bigs are looked at as the centerpiece, no pun intended, of the defense. They're not. It's not usually the guard that's looked at as the foundation
right,
of your defense.
right.
Um, and then also from Untamed, do we get 4 games tomorrow? So yeah, we do. We get 4 games on Saturday and Sunday, and we'll get into that momentarily. We'll get through the other play-in discussion, I guess, before we do that. But yeah, now that all the playoff matchups are set, they have the matchups, they have the schedule, so that's all done.
Yeah,
Then we move on to the Mavs Grizzlies game. This one I think was a little bit more expected, right? Like, I mean, obviously, like if you looked at the odds, we don't do the betting stuff, right? But I think the Heat were like a 1 point favorite or something like that going into the game, so they knew it would be a pretty close game. It was a coin flip. This one, I think the Grizzlies were favored a little bit more substantially because they're the better team. Obviously, with the Mavs, we know they've had a tough go since the Luka trade. Even before the Luka trade, right? It was kind of tough because he got hurt, right? And then they started to fall in the standings. They tried to stay afloat. Then obviously they traded him, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. AD debuts, has a great game, and then gets hurt. And then everybody for the Mavs, gets hurt, right? Because then Kyrie tears his ACL. Some of these other guys, that weren't playing, right, because they're hurt, they're not playing at all. So just kind of a nightmarish season for them in a way, right? Where now, you were a team that went to the finals a year ago, and now you're out of the playoffs completely, and now you kind of have to hope and pray that Kyrie gets healthy and, maybe you make a playoff push, but who knows? I mean, obviously for Dallas, pretty much everybody's future is kind of up in the air at this point. We don't really know what to expect.
Yeah. Very unfortunate for Dallas and that franchise and stuff. And in this game, you clearly saw the issues that they will most likely have going forward without a guy like Kyrie. They don't have a real point guard. They don't have a table setter. So everything is through AD. And I mean, look at the turnovers. That kind of I think speaks volumes. Where throughout the entire game they're turning the ball over left and right because they just can't really find anything offensively. Like defensively, I mean, they're okay, but if you can't
They
really,
got annihilated in this game.
yeah, but I mean, you can't really like rely on your defense if you're not converting your stops into anything. So that's the issue with the team, and yeah, I'm very concerned. Dallas looks so dead. A guy named Brandon Williams was playing. Hey, nope, don't disrespect Brandon Williams. I'm not gonna lie, Brandon Williams is not bad. He has a bag, but yeah, I get what you're saying. He's kind of like a nobody to a lot of people.
If
But
that's the guy that you're looking to save your season, perimeter wise, that's kind of a tough spot.
Yeah,
Even with the way he has played. And, again, that's tough because you got a 40-point game from AD. He did his job, and it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. Even Clay, you got 18 out of him, 4 of 11 from 3, but, fine game from him. But just, defensively, you look at the other end of the floor, and Jaren Jackson Jr. 24 and 7, right? Edie had 15 and 11 rebounds, 7 of 9 from the field. Scottie Pippen Jr., John Morant, right, did most of his damage in the first half, right? Didn't do quite as much in the second half as a scorer. But, obviously we know with his ankle, right? Obviously, you can only do but so much, except he had some crazy highlights in the first half. But this was kind of expected. Just with the way Dallas was trending, like, I'm sure they were going to fight and try to win the game, but they just didn't have the talent offensively to be able to keep up. And like you said, doesn't matter how good your defense is. If you can't get any offense going, then eventually the defense just breaks down anyways. Defense wins championships. Nico Harris, that's from Untamed. Yeah, it's just rough. And again, it wasn't like Dallas couldn't defend before they made the AD trade. Like, I mean, when they made the finals, I mean, a big part of that was obviously their offense, but also their defense. They were one of the best. I think they were the best defensive team in the league post trade deadline, or certainly top 2. Obviously, just they ran into the Celtics, who were just a buzzsaw. You weren't really getting past them, and it's a bad matchup for them. But just again, you can understand, I guess, in theory, the vision. It's just the problem is you had a franchise guy, and there was just no real reason to do it. And now, if you're Dallas, I mean, it would be kind of hard to, at least for right now, feel like you're doing great. Because, I mean, again, your season is over after making the finals when, not that they were going to, but they, with a healthy group with what they had before the trade, they could have potentially made a finals push, once Luka got healthy. But, it just, even before the trade, right? Like, it looked like it was going to be a rough year because they had a lot of injuries. I mean, it looked like it just probably wasn't going to work out for them anyways. But now it's a worse situation.
yeah. I'm curious. I'm
yeah.
curious, like, how much do you put a lot of value in their off season? Is that gonna? Do you think that's gonna really like kind of define the year they're gonna have next year, or do you just not even care? Like, do you think they're just absolutely cooked no matter what they do?
I mean, the problem is I don't think they have any cap space, so they can't really go out and sign anybody. I guess they would probably just bring back Kyrie Irving, re-sign him, but you still have to wait until he comes back in January. So it's probably based off of maybe what they do in trades. But then, what are you going to do with some of these guys, right? I mean, like, because Klay Thompson will be another year older. I think the hope is guys like maybe like a Derek Lively and Max Christie continue to improve, right? So worst case scenario, it helps your bench. Or maybe those guys, Lively's already a starter, but maybe he gets better. Maybe Christie becomes even better. He's a starter. Who knows? It's just a tough situation to be in. You need Kyrie Irving. I think if you get him back, you can at least see what it looks like. But with him not being back until January, that's almost half the season, right? So, I mean, that may not be enough time to be able to really make a meaningful run. So I don't know what they can do, but I feel like there would probably have to be some type of trade.
Yeah, I agree.
And then from the Memphis perspective, looks like Keith Wells said 2. I guess he's saying like Memphis is going to get chewed up and clawed by OKC, and that's kind of the theme here. Was that like regardless of who won this game, you expected the Grizzlies to win, but I don't think they're going to be able to put up much of a fight against Oklahoma City. They do have good high end talent because Ja, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. That's a good trio of guys. I just think defensively, I don't know how they're going to really be able to slow down SGA. I mean, I guess maybe you hope that their bigs can kind of stop him from attacking the basket and maybe they can avoid picking up fouls. But are those guys going to avoid picking up fouls? I don't know, right? Ja Morant, right? If his ankle is, gets worse, what does that look like? It's just, I don't see a scenario where Memphis wins this series. Maybe there's a way for them again if their three best guys play really well, somebody off the bench gets hot, maybe they could steal a game or two, but I don't see a scenario where they're able to win 4 out of 7. I just think OKC is just a significantly better team, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And also Memphis again has not beat a winning team in the Western Conference in over 2 months. And I mean, is that going to continue? Maybe they get again one win, but regardless, I mean, that'd be a pretty disappointing season for the Grizzlies because most people expect them to be a top 4 seed and maybe be like a sneaky team that could win multiple rounds, but they probably won't get out of the first round.
Yeah, they're getting swept 100%. Nobody on that team can check Shea. Nobody's going to probably be able to shut down J-Dub, and that's what I'm really looking at. I'm expecting J-Dub to really kind of find his footing here and, put his foot on their necks, if you want me to be honest. Like, there's nobody on that team in the starting lineup that can give either of those guys any trouble.
Yeah, no wings. Without guys like Jalen Wells and Brandon Clark, who's not a wing, he's a big, but he's a guy who can guard in smaller lineups. I don't see how they're going to be able to slow down OKC, and I think OKC has, will be able to slow them down. And I don't think Memphis has beaten OKC in a while. I think they said on the broadcast it had been a couple years at least.
Yeah, it's bad.
We do have a couple of comments from Untamed. I wonder what kind of packages they could have gotten for Luka if they announced it to the whole league that he's up for trade. They could have done an ESPN special like LeBron, the auction, LMAO. Yeah, I do kind of wonder
when that initially happened.
Right, yeah. I mean, I guess the thing always is that like, hey, it's not like you got chopped liver. You got Anthony Davis, you got Max Christie, and I guess you got a Laker pick in the future. But it just feels like, if other teams had called, like, would they have offered any of their top players? Like, say, I don't know how many guys, that you think would be untouchable. But, like, say if you look at any of these potential playoff teams, would any of those teams have, moved their franchise guy for Luka? Like, some of them probably would have. Maybe not all of them, but I think there would have been at least a few, right? Like, obviously, I guess if you're Denver, you probably say no. I think if you're OKC, you say no. And then obviously the Lakers said, huh?
What about Boston?
That's a tough one. I feel like because of the way Tatum has played and I think what he means to Boston, I don't think they would do that.
Like, I agree, because they won the chip.
And I think Tatum played at a level where, like, yeah, like maybe you could say he may not be as good individually, but I think because of all the things he does, it balances out.
Agreed.
And I think if you're Boston, I think that's fine.
Agreed.
Obviously, the Lakers said yes. Houston, I mean, they don't have a top 10 guy, right? So, I mean, I guess they would say yes. What about Minnesota? You think they would do 8?
Wasn't there a rumor that they didn't do that?
I don't know. I don't know really what to believe from that situation.
Yeah, I know.
But would you do that? Like, if you're Minnesota, would you trade Anthony Edwards for Luka? Like, would you have done that?
No.
Okay. All right. And then Memphis, I think you say yes.
Yeah.
Golden State, I think they would say no because of what Steph means to the team. I don't think they would do that. And then, I mean, after that, I mean, when you go lower on the list, you're going to say yes.
Yeah, like the Knicks, Pistons, Pacers,
Bucks. Yeah.
Well, exactly, Bucks would be interesting. Giannis for Luka?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. Again, I think it's another situation where it's like because of what I think they mean a lot to that team.
Agreed.
So I think they might say no. Would you trade Luka for Jordan Poole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't know if the Wizards had any, guys that they were like, that's our guy. We're not moving.
I would have traded him for Kuzma.
Joel Embiid.
Joel. Oh wow, yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, if you're Philly, you kind of have to do it.
Yeah. LaMelo Ball. Just kidding.
Yeah,
all right. So also from Untamed, OKC might be the most boring team in the playoffs. So what do you think about that? Like, Do we mean boring from the perspective of because we think that they're going to roll through the West? Is it boring because of the way they play? I'm curious what he means by that. Or is it just what boring normally would mean?
It can't be the way they play because if, we all have seen what the Thunder are able to do, and there's specifically one guy. Like, I think Shea is one of the more entertaining players, especially if you really do watch how he can break down a defense and actually keep guys off balance pretty much through 4 quarters of an NBA game. I think it's pretty special. So I don't know about that. Shea is my MVP. Good. You're on the right side of history, my friend, because I'm telling you, these Jokic fiends are crazy. I just hate his game. Wow, that's interesting.
I think it
can't be the free. It can't be the free throw thing.
I think that's what it is.
It can't be, because that's not even like. I would argue that it's not even top 3 of his best aspects of his game. Like, I think I could name like.
And it's Oklahoma City. Okay, I think that's probably part of it.
OKC, Whack
City?
Dude, they have a vibe. Like, it's
Ferris wheels.
It's a good vibe there. Like, they know, they bring the energy. Like, I don't think it's whack. I think, could it be corny? Could their fans be a little bit, over the top at times? Yeah, but I don't think it's like whack. And I don't think they're boring at all.
Would you stay in OKC for a week?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Go see Thunder games for a week. And whatever else they got. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, I guess from OKC's perspective, whoever would have come out of this series, I think OKC is wiping the floor with them. I'd be surprised if it goes beyond 5. Like I said, I could see Memphis getting 1 just because I could see just a crazy offensive performance where they just, OKC has a bad shooting night, Memphis can't miss, gets hot, and then that's kind of that. But like I said, I don't see them going 4 out of 7 times. I just, these games today for the plan is just kind of like, you're the 8 seed. You're not probably getting out of the first round. So your season is just going to end 2 weeks from now as opposed to now, right? And for some of these teams, it might be nice for them. Like, for some of them, I'm sure they would like if you were the Hawks and you got into the playoffs, like, yeah, you'd get smoked, but at least you could say, like, yeah, we have some young guys who haven't been in a playoff setting. Let's get them some experience. Let's get Dyson Daniels, who I guess was on New Orleans last year, but I don't think he played very much.
No.
In the playoffs at all.
No.
Right, so, like, get him some minutes, get Risa Shea some minutes, Okongwu some minutes. I know has played before, but just, in general, that would be nice, right? I guess for the Heat, you have some guys who can get some playoff reps. I mean, some of them have already been there before. A couple went to the finals, but, and then I guess, for the Grizzlies, you're back in the playoffs, but, now you're kind of in a lower spot, right? Because remember, a couple seasons ago, they were the 2 seed, right? Obviously, they went out in the first round, but, just it's kind of a rough situation to be in.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially because for most of the year they were a top 3 seed, and now they're ending the season as the 8th seed, and again probably going out in the first round.
What, they were top 2 coming off the All-Star break or something like that?
Yeah, I think before they dropped off, I think they were like 36-18. They were a top 2-3 seed, and then the second post All-Star break they just completely fell apart. Oh, and I got Shea as my depoy as well. He led the league in defensive win shares.
He's an elite defender. Very slept on aspect of his game. That's another reason why I think he should be MVP. Like, Jokic plays absolutely no defense.
Yeah, this season was not a great defensive.
Yeah, he got freaking dog walked every game. Like, it was bad. At least Shea was doing something.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think as he was both of our picks to win it. Yes. I think he's going to win it. I wouldn't be mad if Jokic won it because he had a great individual year as well. Yeah. But I think SGA is going to get this one. I think most people think he's going to get it, and he probably will get it overwhelmingly. Like, I'm sure Jokic will get some first place votes, but I just think the way OKC closed out the season, because at one point I think Denver was a 2 seed, then they kind of fell. They could have dropped to the play-in. I think if he had dropped to the play-in, there probably would have been no chance that he would have gotten the MVP. At least top 4 will probably get some votes, but I think SGA got it.
Because you look at Shea and like the season he had, like, defensively on point, the scoring numbers on point, the win shares, all that stuff. It's the advanced analytics, whatever you want to look at, it's all there. But then I do understand why a lot of people really want Jokic to win that, because he's having a season that we've never seen before. Like, it's freaking crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure Nico Harrison would be happy about that.
Yeah.
So I guess, if we're moving on, because those are kind of, we don't really have a whole lot to the play-in games. Let's see, give this one to SGA and tell
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 Bum-
Embiid to airmail that trophy to Denver overnight shipping. Oh my
retweet,
gosh,
retweet,
I
retweet,
remember
bro.
that. Those were good times. Those were
Yeah,
good
dude,
times.
that that feud between Embiid and Jokic fans, oh my god. That fed
Yeah, I mean,
families.
yeah, because like this one, I guess this one I'm sure got toxic, but it was definitely not as toxic as that one. I mean,
Yeah.
that one was legitimately insane.
And it's funny because a lot of the same logic that, Jokic fans and defenders, are using against Shea, they used it for Joel Embiid too, like with the whole free throw thing,
Mhm.
all kinds of crazy stuff.
Standings, I think too. I
Yeah.
think the problem is that there's no set criteria for MVP, and I feel like a lot of times people will just kind of be like, "Well, I'm just gonna pick this guy because I think he deserves it," for one reason
Right.
or another. Like, and they'll change it each year because some years they'll have it be like it's the best player on the best team. Then other years it's like it's a guy that has a crazy individual season, even though the team's not very good. Then there's another one where it's like, well, the team is really good, maybe not the best team, but then that evens out. It changes every year. And so like that's I think kind of the problem with the discourse of it is just because there's no set, there's no set group of rules. Like they're not gonna write out in pencil, all right, here's what you need to do in order to win MVP. Like they're not gonna do that. But I just think from that perspective, it just sometimes makes the discussion tough because I think people just tend to forget. Like they'll use one criteria one year, like you said, and then the next year just completely ignore that criteria again
Yeah.
and not use it, or like you said, use the exact opposite criteria. Like you said, I think the year Jokic won MVP, right? I think what was that? That was the year before they won the title, right? Because he went back to back, and it was the years before they won the title, right?
Yeah.
Where his team wasn't the best in their conference, right? But he had great stats, and then the year Embiid won it, that was the year where the Nuggets were the 1 seed. I think Philly was, I think they were third,
Yeah.
right?
They
In
were
the
third.
East, but Embiid had a great season, so they were like, it evens out. Their wins are close, and I think Jokic by the end of that season, right, he sat out some games.
Yeah.
So I think that was the other part that allowed Embiid to close the gap. Let's see, Jokic had a great season this year, but SGA had a better season. No bias on my end. I mean,
Agreed.
again, both guys were awesome. Either guy could win it, and I wouldn't be disappointed. But I think SGA edges out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree. I have a question play-in wise.
Sure.
Do you think they should continue this?
I don't have an issue with the play-in. It's nice that my team isn't in it for once, so that helps.
Oh.
But I think at the same time, the only thing is that I feel like you don't need the 9-10. And I feel like most people probably feel that way because it's just what difference does it make? Like I don't see a 9-10 team winning a playoff series unless a team, unless the 1 seed has like just an insane amount of injuries, right?
Yeah.
Like I guess what was it? The Pelicans got in, I think, one year where they had like 30 something wins, right?
Yeah.
And I guess they took the Suns who won 64 games to 6, but I think Booker got hurt in that series if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So that kind of set it up in a different way. So I don't know. I mean, let's see. No more playing again. Again, no bias. I'm a C's fan. Yeah, I think they were in the playing like one time, right? I looked back because there was like a thread I saw on X where they were like they had like a compilation of the best performances with the playing games, and I completely forgot that there was like a playing game between the Celtics and I think what was it, the Wizards or something, where like Tatum had 50, and I completely forgot about that.
Don't remind me as a
I
Wizards
completely
fan. Don't
forgot
remind
about
me.
that game because like the play-in stats don't normally count, or they don't count at all. So like people don't usually keep track of like who scored the most points in a play-in game, right? And I guess it was Tatum with 50.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny because I completely forgot about that one. I mean, like I said, I don't have an issue with it. I think the problem is that there are some years where kind of like what Untamed said earlier, where it just feels like a team got screwed, right? Where like if you're the Hawks, you were the 8 seed and then you lost in the play-in and then you're out of the playoffs. Golden State had a year where they were the 8 seed, then they lost 2 play-in games.
Yep.
Basically right at the end, and then their season is over.
Yeah, I think it's
right?
stupid,
So,
in my opinion.
yeah, so I mean, I feel like, and I think usually the fix I think is I don't Untamed. I don't even remember that. Yeah, exactly. He's a Celtics fan. He doesn't
Yeah.
remember. That's my point. I completely forgot about that game.
Yep.
But yeah, so I don't have a problem with the plan because I do think some of the games are competitive. It's just the problem is some of them will not be competitive because it's just there's a difference in talent between the teams. Like we've gotten some good playing games every year. Like you had the one last year between the Lakers and the Pelicans. You had the one the year before where it was like Lakers Wolves, Lakers Warriors. All those playing games were good. Hawks Heat was good, but it's like I wouldn't 100% miss it if they didn't have it anymore. But I think they also, from a revenue standpoint, and like again, you're bound to get at least a couple of good games. And usually this is like the first time where we had a 10 seed get in. Usually there's not like a crazy amount of upsets. Maybe sometimes the 7 seed loses and then becomes the 8 seed, but usually you don't normally have a lower seed sink in or come in. Davion Mitchell literally took the Heat from 10th to 8th with 3 overtime
Yeah,
three-pointers.
and a freaking offensive rebound. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I
Yeah.
hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, the Heat had some funny possessions where it was like, what was it? It was like a Wiggins spin where it like banked in. I think there was a play where one of the Heat guys basically turned the ball over, but then they got it back and then they were able to tip it in.
It was Bam.
Kyle Anderson had like a couple of shot clock fadeaway.
Yeah, freaking grenades, bro. Like, how is he hitting grenades?
Yeah,
and we picked the Heat.
Yeah, we did. We did pick.
But I wanted Atlanta to win. I really do. I like Atlanta more than Miami.
Yeah, and that board, like,
Dude, it was so corny, bro. I was pissed.
Stuff like that happens. Stuff like that will happen in a game. I mean, again, these are NBA players. They're gonna sometimes make crazy plays. It's just funny, like this is not a game that I would have bet on. I mean, like I said, we picked the Heat to win, but I mean, we were sweating buckets, right, when it looked like the Heat might have, bungled that game away. And then we would have been wrong. Keith Wells said SGA should already be a 2-time MVP. What do you think about that? Because I think last year, Bam tipped it in. Yeah, slow-mo buzzer beaters. Yeah, that stuff happens. It's just like usually you expect it from the stars, not usually from guys who are role players.
Exactly.
But what do you think about that one? But what do you think about that one? SGA should already be a 2-time MVP because I think last year, what was it? Jokic won it. And I think, obviously people made the case for SGA to win it, but it didn't seem like people were disappointed that SGA didn't win it. You know what I mean? Like, I think the Thunder were the 1 seed, I think by like, 1 or 2 games. So it wasn't that different in terms of the standings. This year, I think, is where it's like more pronounced. And I think if you're an OKC fan, that's the part that would hurt because it's like, come on, we were the 1 seed last year and you didn't give it to us. Now we're the 1 seed by a ridiculous amount of games, right? We're almost, 20 games better than literally every other team in the conference, and we're still not going to get it. I think he's going to get it, but what do you think about that? Like, do you remember who we even picked to win MVP last year?
I think I picked Luka. And I was really freaking pissed that he didn't win it because I think he deserved it. I think he should have won it last year. Granted, the standings were, very different. And I think they were, 5? So,
yeah, they were the 5.
I don't know how likely it was. But if we're going strictly off of numbers, I think Luka deserved it last year. SGA was a solid second place last year for me as MVP. But if he won it, that would have been fine. Yeah, I mean, I think last year he had a great season. But this year you can tell, like,
it's been even better.
Yeah, he's gotten better, and the counting stats don't show it, but if you watch, his game is on a whole different level at this point.
Yeah. So I guess now looking forward, right, we can look forward to some of the game ones, right, that we'll be able to see. We'll finally have some playoff action, starting this Saturday, I think at 1 p.m. Right, that's the first game. So we got 4 game ones tomorrow. We got Bucks Pacers, Clippers, Nuggets, Pistons, Knicks, Wolves, Lakers. So I guess we'll start with Bucks, Pacers. What are we looking for in this game? Who do we expect to win it? Obviously, we know Lillard's going to be out for this first game. And they think he'll probably, I guess he's cleared from his blood clots situation, right? So I guess they expect him to come back. We don't know when, but we know he's at least out for this game. So let's see. This year way better. Yeah, I guess he's talking about SGA.
Yeah. No question
and then
about it.
So what are we thinking of this first game? What are you looking for? What do you think's going to happen?
Give me the Bucks on the road. I think they steal game one, and that's going to be the nail in the coffin of the series. If you want me to be honest, I think there's a roadmap for them to do so. I think Giannis is going to pop off. Everybody's fully rested. Both teams are fully rested, but Giannis just has that look in his eyes this season, and I feel like them running him at the point forward position pretty much, I think, has unlocked a different version of him, or one that we haven't seen in a very long time. The midi is falling. He's finding ways, to get other guys involved. And that's also taken, his game to another level, to the point where he's borderline unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. I think with the news that Lillard is coming back, I think you can make the case that they could pull this, that they could pull off the upset. Because I think at the very least, I'm sure the vibes are probably better now that they know at some point Lillard will be back. Again, we don't know what game he'll be back in, or if he, comes back this series. I guess they're expecting him to. But yeah, I think for the Bucks, I gonna lean. I think it'll be close. I think the Bucks will win it, but I think it'll be a really close game. And I think this game, if you're the Pacers, I think you need to defend home court. Indiana, Milwaukee, Dame is the biggest missing factor. I think Indy's offense will run through them. And that is the case for the Pacers to win the series, because the case could be the Pacers have a better team. They have more depth. They are more capable of defending this year in ways that they weren't able to last year. Halliburton's back to playing at an All-NBA, All-Star plus level. And then with the way they can run up and down the floor, some of the Bucks guys might be overwhelmed. You're banking on, if Lillard's not playing, you're banking on Kyle Kuzma. You're banking on, I guess, Kevin Porter Jr. off the bench, Bobby Portis. And they need those guys to play well if they're going to be able to win. Because I don't know if they'll be able to completely slow down Indiana's offense. But it's a tough one. But I think at the very least, the Bucks, I think they'll win game one, but I think it'll be really close. It wouldn't shock me if the Pacers won. And this is one of those series where I could see us being wrong on this one, because of the fact that I think it's better team, but the other team has the best player. So that's where I think the Bucks can win it. But I think it'll be a tough one. Like, if the Bucks do win, I don't think it'll be easy.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hallie got snubbed from All-Star. Better not get snubbed off All-NBA teams. I don't know if he's going to be. I think we picked him to be on our All-NBA list. I think I had him third, I think. I don't know. I don't remember what you had him as.
I had him as third as well.
You had him as third? Okay. Yeah, so we had him as third. I don't know what they're going to do for the lower parts of the All-NBA. I'm going to assume for guards. I'm going to assume at the very least, SGA is obviously going to be on it. I'm sure Mitchell will be on it. Those guys will probably be first team. Brunson, Steph, Edwards, those three I think will be on it for sure. And then I think after that, Cade, and then either Halliburton or one of the other guards. We'll see. But we had him on there, so I think he should be on there. I guess some people will make the case of, again, he started the season off slow, right? Should you reward a guy for not playing well to begin the season? But that's why you don't have to put him on first team. Like, you can put him on third team, and then that's perfectly fine.
Yeah,
right.
Deserved.
First team would probably be reserved for the people who were great all season.
Exactly.
Right. And second, third team is where you get a little bit more flexible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Then moving on to game two, or not game two, the second game of the day. This one will be 3:30 Eastern time. Clippers Nuggets. This is another one that I think is also going to be a fun. I think this one will be a fun series. Kind of tough one to figure out, because I think with the way that the Clippers have played, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, because that's why some of the teams are where they're at. So, then we move on to Clippers Nuggets. Then for this one, it's funny because the Clippers have been playing great basketball for the last couple of months. Kawhi's healthy. He's back. He looks great. Harden's played very well. Kept them afloat while Kawhi was out. Still played well since he's come back. Norman Powell, great season. Zubac, great season. Could be like a dark horse All-NBA guy. Curious to see what they do with him. In terms of his All-NBA standings. Does he make all defense? Could be. And obviously they have Ty Lue. He says he's rooting for James and Kawhi. We picked the Nuggets to win this in 7. Again, this is another one where I would not be shocked if the Clippers won. The Clippers have been playing better. Obviously, the Nuggets fired their coach and their GM. So that's not necessarily great to go into the playoffs. What does Jamal Murray look like? He hasn't necessarily been, healthy. He's been out. I mean, he came back to close out the season, but he had a long stretch for a couple of weeks where he was out, especially James. Yeah, I mean, again, shout out to those guys for being able to, stick around, for Harden. People thought he was kind of finished, right, a couple seasons ago, and he's adapted and adjusted his game in a way where, he's still helping them win games, and he's been a big part of what they were able to do this season. And then obviously Kawhi was able to come back and close the season strong because when he first came back, looked a little rusty, and then he's got better and better since then. But what do we expect from this one? Because again, two teams that have kind of been playing differently. Bucks will run past Pacers in 6. Yeah, we'll see. I think that was our pick. Could be wrong. Wouldn't shock me if I'm wrong. Because I've seen most people pick the Pacers to win the series, and I think especially a big part of that is the uncertainty with Dame.
Yeah.
So we'll see. And then for this one, seems like people are moving towards the Clippers now to win this series. It just feels like they've been better than the Nuggets for a while. It's another situation where Clippers might be the better team, but the Nuggets do have the best player. Now, obviously, the Clippers have Zubac, so he can be a guy that, worst case scenario, even if he doesn't contain Jokic, he can at least respond back and still give him great production on both ends of the floor. Obviously, for the Clippers, they have guys that they're going to be banking on to hit shots from the outside. Guys like Chris Dunn, guys like Derrick Jones Jr. Can they knock down the open shots they get? That tends to be a big X factor in most playoff series. Is can the role players who are left open for a reason hit some big shots? But Denver has that as well, right? Like teams are going to leave guys like Peyton Watson and Christian Brown, who did shoot well from 3. But they're going to leave him open. Gordon's probably going to be left open, even though he was a great 3-point shooter this season. Obviously, the Nuggets are not particularly deep. Once you get past their top 6, it gets pretty rough. But this is game 1. It's in Denver, right? Denver has not been quite as good at home this season. They are 26-15, which is still good, right? But not quite as dominant at home as we have seen them to be. But what do you expect in this game?
I'm expecting the Nuggets to set the tone. I think Jamal Murray pops off. I think Jokic pops off. I think it's an all-around great game from the Nuggets, and I think, like I said, they set the tone and take game 1 at home.
I'm gonna go there too. Let's see, Zoo and Yoke is gonna be tough. Dunn, a bona fide defender. Love it. Happy with the exit of Clips or Tasty Nuggets. Yeah, I've heard some people say that. I mean, of course, people are going to say that about different teams.
I feel like that's only like something a Lakers fan would say.
Yeah. Who knows? Everybody's got teams where like they're kind of hate watching, you know what I mean? Like we all have teams that we're just kind of hate watching, It's playoff time and you're kind of just waiting to see like, oh, I'm waiting to see that team, get knocked out.
Heck yeah.
All flat on their face, it happens. So, but yeah, so I have the Nuggets winning that game. But again, like I said, with the way the Clippers have played, I think they can win this series. It's just, again, can you trust Kawhi to stay healthy? Can you trust Harden in a playoff series? I guess the nice thing is, even if he doesn't play great, you do have Norman Powell. Keith, you're a Lakers fan. We get it. That's funny. We got some potential schisms going on in the chat. So that's kind of funny, as long as we keep it civil, it's all good. And that's what it seems like right here. So, but yeah, we'll see. I think I'm excited for this series. I think this will be a fun one. And I think for the Clippers, if they do get out of this series, I think they do have a real chance to make it to the Western Conference Finals and potentially challenge OKC. I still would have OKC coming out of the West, but I do think the Clippers, if they're healthy and they play like the team we've seen them play the last couple of months, they could do it.
Yeah, I agree. There's a pathway for sure.
Yeah. And then moving on to the third game of the day, Pistons-Knicks, right? Now, this is one that I think also should be a fun, interesting series. Obviously, you have a young team from first rounder regardless, for sure. We'll definitely watch. Yeah, exactly. Pistons-Knicks, obviously the young Pistons team, horrible last year. More than tripled their wins this year, so great to see. Obviously, the progression of their young guys, Cade Cunningham, right, who, glad I didn't sell my stock. Now he's going to be an all-NBA guy. Played like one of the best players in the league this year. Obviously, you got some vets that they brought in. Malik Beasley, potential 6th Man of the Year guy, right? Tim Hardaway Jr. got banished from Dallas, but actually still was able to get into the playoffs and, play a pivotal role. Tobias Harris, of course, Asor Thompson, Jalen Duren, guys like that. I think the Knicks will win this series. We both picked the Knicks to win in 6. I think if Jaden Ivey hadn't gotten hurt, I still would have probably picked the Knicks to win, but I think the Pistons could be like really scary for them because then you'd have 2 dynamic offensive guards, more athleticism, just more offense that you could go to. Without that, I think you're kind of banking on some of those guys for Detroit to knock down some threes. Obviously, Brunson spent most of the last month or so injured, right? He's come back. He claims he's close to 100%. I think Detroit's going to test that. We'll see what Cade does in the pick and roll. But I think the Knicks will be at home. I expect them to win this game. I think as long as most of their core guys offensively do what they've been doing, they should win this game and they should win this series.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Knicks are going to have a, tone-setting kind of game. I think, they're going to throw the kitchen sink and everything else that goes with it at, Cade Cunningham, because I think they're fine with, a lot of those role players on that team kind of being the guys that are forced to beat them. So, that's what I think their strategy is going to be. And offensively, I'm sure they will have no struggles whatsoever. So I'm taking the Knicks game 1.
Yeah. Then we have, let's see, Pistons, Knicks. I got Knicks in 7. Okay. Even though Detroit has no experience, I believe they will scare them a little. This is Cat series. Bring JD out to the perimeter, and he's a fish out of water, but Detroit is tough. Yeah, and I think that's the good case. I think Detroit will give them some run. Obviously, they're a physical team. We've seen them get into scuffles at different points this season. I'm sure there will be multiple in this series. I can see it coming. Maybe Isaiah Stewart, maybe Ron Holland from the bench. I don't know how much he'll play, but stuff like that can happen. Dennis Schroeder, who knows? But I think this is kind of just a classic case of a young team with not a lot of playoff experience, had a great regular season, but the run probably ends here. But even if they lose in the first round, I don't think that's a disappointment for Detroit, given how horrible they had been the last few years. I think either way, it's a great season. Obviously, it's even better if you win, but I think the Knicks have a lot more to lose if they lose in the first round than the Pistons, right? Yeah. And I think, the Knicks, they have guys who've been in big playoff series, including their main guys, right? We'll see what Towns does, but I think Cat should have a big series in this one, just because of the fact that, like he said, right, you bring Jalen Duren out to the perimeter, you can play 5 out, right? Once you get past Duren, should be able to, find some ways to score around the rim. Who's the guy that defends Jalen Brunson? Probably Asor Thompson. We'll see. And can you get some big performances out of some of the young guys? Maybe, but I don't think they'll be able to do it, like I said, 4 out of 7 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Then Lakers-Wolves. This is the primetime matchup, right? Obviously, the new-look Lakers with Luka and LeBron against the Wolves. I guess new-look Wolves, right, too, right? Because they made a big trade where they swapped Cat with Randall and DiVincenzo. This will be in LA, right? LA, I think this is the first time in a while that they're going to be that they're going to start a series at home, right? Because the last couple of seasons they were on the road because they were a lower seed. But what do we think for this game, right? This is a home game for LA. They've been really good at home. I think they're favored to win the series. We picked them to win. I had them in 6. I think you had them in 5. But there is a pathway, I think, for the Wolves, to win this series. I think if they want to win the series, I think they need to win one of these first 2 games. And ideally, you want to win game 1. But the question is, with the Lakers having gotten, a decent amount of rest because they didn't have to play the last regular game of the season, didn't have to be in the play-in, and things like that, they should be fresh going into this. Let's see, LA, Minnesota going to be low scoring. If it's low scoring, that in theory should benefit Minnesota. But, what do you think of this?
Yeah, this is a tough one to call. I think, a lot of people, including myself, do have the Lakers winning this kind of swiftly, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm going to take probably the Lakers in game 1. Once again, another statement kind of thing. I think, they're going to target and hunt Rudy Gobert. I know that might kind of be crazy to say, considering, that he is a former depoy, but, we already know what Luka versus Gobert is going to look like. I think the trio of AR, Bron, and Luka is just going to be a little bit too much for Minnesota to probably handle. They can do so many things on both ends of the floor. They're too versatile, I think, for Minnesota. But Minnesota does have some crazy X factors where, like, if they pop off, or like Untamed said, if it's going to be a low scoring series, then or game. Like Minnesota will probably win it, but I don't foresee that happening. I just don't think that Minnesota has enough depth to really slow down the Lakers' firepower. So I'm taking the Lakers in game one.
Yeah, I think for both teams, it comes down to, you expect the stars to play relatively well, but is there a way to limit the stars in any way? Like, can you make them maybe be lesser versions of themselves? Could you force LeBron and Luka into maybe some turnovers and turn that into some offense if you're Minnesota? And then if you're, the Lakers, right, is there a way that you can kind of make Edwards, kind of have to make more decisions where he has to take his time with the basketball and maybe force him into, some double teams where he ends up kind of throwing the ball away, maybe some panic passes. Can you force Randall into situations where he can't just overpower other defenders, right? Because that's, when he's at his best, when he's able to attack downhill. I think the Lakers will win game one. And I think it'll be, if you're the Lakers, you want it to be a statement win, but I do think it will be competitive. Like,
Yeah.
I think Minnesota will, give it the best they got. It's just, again, can you keep some of those guys on the floor? Can you have some of those bench guys show up? Could DiVincenzo or Naz Reid get hot? And can you use your bigs to your advantage? But, the only problem is playing two bigs against a team like the Lakers, because of the perimeter offense that they have, there is a way for them to potentially make it tough to play with both of those bigs. And if it's a scenario where you can't do that, then I think, then it might be a little bit more difficult for Minnesota. If I'm Minnie, I'm putting Jaden on Luka, Randall on Braun, Ant on Austin. What do you think of that?
That has to be how it goes. I think there's no other way around it, and Gobert cannot close the games. I'm sorry. I'm closing my games if I'm Minnesota with Naz Reid at the 5. There's no shot. Gobert cannot be out there if it's a close game.
Yeah. Just a couple other role players just to reference. Can Jackson Hayes and Jared Vanderbilt play in this series?
Not Vando. Not extended minutes, because I think that leaves the option of, okay, well, Gobert can just sit there and not have to really guard Vando if Vando's going to be in the corner, right? Jackson Hayes, I think, has potential to probably start, but I don't think he's probably going to get a crazy amount of playing time. They probably won't close with him. I don't think they normally do, but yeah, I mean, it's probably going to depend on if Gobert is out there, really.
Yeah, like if Gobert's off the floor, because you don't expect Vanderbilt to play like 25, 30
no,
minutes.
But I think he barely is going to play. He's probably going to play like maybe 5, if you want me to be honest. I don't know, because you can't have him out there because Gobert's just going to sit on it.
Yeah. We'll see. I think if he's out there, I think obviously he can't, like you said, just be in the corner and just spot up for threes. If he's going to be out there, he has to be able to defend somebody. So, like, if he's out there, it has to be like if Ant's out there, but maybe not if Gobert is out there, because I think, like, if he doesn't have anybody to guard, it's kind of pointless to have him out there unless, you're going to hope that he gets some rebounds. Obviously we know his struggles offensively. If they can find a way.
That's my concern. Offensively is like, where do you put him?
Yeah, if you can find a way to keep him on the floor, I think that's a good thing if you're LA. Like, if you can find a way to keep him on the floor and get some defense, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And I guess just as a note, we are going to stream Saturday after the game ones. We're not going to be able to do it on Sunday. Just kind of as a note. So just putting that out there. Yeah. But yeah, those are our predictions, because I think we should probably save the game one predictions for the next games probably tomorrow, after the game one. So that way we can mention that for the Sunday game ones. Yep. But is there anything else, that we missed?
No, I think we covered all the bases. We got Mr. Pops. Let's go Heat.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Pops. Let's go Heat. Yeah, we did talk about the Heat earlier in the stream. I guess if you want, leave your thoughts in the chat, about what you think is going to happen in that series.
Yeah, and then Keith Wells said, Lakers in 6, Ant-Man will be a problem. Yeah, I think Ant-Man is always going to be a problem. It's just, I don't have belief in those the supporting cast. I don't know.
And now he's got a high volume 3-point shot, including step back threes. So that's going to be tough to guard, right? I think, like, if he's the best player in the series, they're going to win.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's just the question is that going to happen? It could happen. But I think the question is, can Minnesota limit what Luka and LeBron do? And I think that's going to be the real question. Do they have guys defensively that can limit what they do? Because, we did see McDaniels guard Luka in the playoffs last year, and it it didn't really go well
No.
because he fouled a lot. He got into foul trouble, and eventually they had to put Ant on Luka, and then he got into foul trouble.
Yeah, and if you want me to be honest, here's kind of like my short spiel on what Minnesota needs to do. It's going to probably be a sentence. I think in order for Minnesota to really truly win the series, it's not really even going to come down to defense. I think it's going to come down to their offense because I really feel like the Lakers' defense is good. Don't get me wrong, but it's not invincible. I know a lot of people are really like
Right.
convinced that they're unbeatable because they're so versatile and stuff like that. All you really have to do is just find a way to hunt and switch and get mismatches on Luka. That's really what you need to do. You need to do what Boston did in the finals last year. You kind of need to make Luka unplayable on the defensive end, and I think you'll see, and reap the benefits immediately because also you have Braun as well. His age, I think, is probably going to play a factor in this series. How engaged is he going to be on the defensive end? I know he turns up in the playoffs, but, you can't really beat Father Time. So what does that look like as well? So there is a way, I think, truly for Minnesota to win it, but I don't believe in them. I'm picking the Lakers in 5 at the end of the day.
Lakers mini going to be a heck of a chess game. It is. I think it's going to be a battle of, some of the decisions and strategies that the players and the coaching staffs make. And, I think, like you said, like if Minnesota can, get second chance opportunities and, force turnovers, right? That can turn the series their way. If they can't do that, then it's going to be tough for them to be able to win. Obviously, for the Lakers, their role players are going to have to knock down threes. They're going to have to find some way to probably limit, some of what Ant can do. And then obviously, continue to slow down Randall. Like you said, limit Gobert's impact, make it so that they can't play him as much. Because if he's not out there, that takes away some size, some rim protection, potential lob threat. Force Minnesota in this scenario where maybe they have to go small. Maybe they have to spread the floor, and that might help Edwards, but it may hurt Minnesota defensively.
Oh yeah, they're
And
going
like
to
you
get
said,
cooked.
if it turns into a battle of offenses, then that benefits the Lakers. But if it turns into a battle of defense, it probably benefits, Minnesota. And like you said, if it gets to a scenario where it's super low scoring, it might benefit Minnesota. Because then
100%.
that probably means that, the Lakers stars aren't playing as well offensively. And that's kind of the thing that they do the best. But
100%.
I think it'll be a great series. I think, more so than maybe what some people think. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it is 1 a.m. Eastern time. I think it's about time that we do wrap this up. Like I said, we talked about the play-in. We talked about, all the playoff matchups that are set now. We gave our, game 1 predictions for the games that will be occurring on Saturday. So we appreciate everybody who was in here. We appreciate you, Keith Wells, for the comments. We appreciate you, Untamed, for the comments. And we appreciate you, Mr. Pops, for the comment as well. So before we head out of here, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We will be streaming again tomorrow with our reactions of the game 1s and then our predictions for Sunday's game 1s as well. So once again, please don't forget to